Hello, everyone. I'm so excited. I'm so excited that I rented an office space today. I have a meeting at 3 just so we wouldn't miss the guests because today is an extra special day. And we want to bring a lot of good and great energy to my podcast on this 9/11. And we want you to know, my guest today and I, that you can overcome anything that you possibly can with a positive mindset. And so I am so honored today to introduce you to Doug Thompson. I met Doug, I don't know, it was probably a year ago now, but one thing that really struck me, and you're going to learn today, is the power of being connected in storytelling. He is just an incredible human. He has a powerful message, a powerful method. And I will bring him on so he can introduce himself. But I am so glad that you're going to spend the next, 20 minutes or so with us today, because I think today you're going to be relieved with something much more than you expected. So let's welcome Doug. Hi, Doug. It's good to
I
see
keep
you.
looking for that guy. I keep looking for that guy you were talking about there a minute ago. But hi, everybody. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, you bet. Why don't you go ahead and tell everyone who you are and what you're passionate about?
Sure. I'm Doug Thompson. I'm a sales nerd by trade and by training, I guess, but I'm a storyteller at heart. And I'm on a mission to twofold. One of them is in-text explaining. So if you've ever been in one of those, somebody explain very technical thing to you and you fall asleep, you don't understand anything. I'm trying to stop that, right? There's too much of that. And then simply help everybody tell their own story, because we have these stories. And when I grew up, I was fortunate enough at the time I had to talk with people. I had to learn to tell stories. I didn't have texting and all these other things where you don't exercise that muscle. So I've exercised that muscle a lot. We're going to do a workout today. We'll do a storytelling
I love it.
workout.
Let's do it. That's exciting. Storytelling, from a learning science standpoint, it creates emotional resonance. And it's something that you don't ever forget, when you tap into that piece. So, in your experience, is this something that you learned, or how did you become interested in this? Was it, what was it that kind of set you on this journey?
Yeah, well, to answer your question, people can learn it. It's a skill that can be learned to the degree that you perfect it. I believe there's a certain personality and some other thing. You can say you're born with it, what have you, but everybody can learn to improve to do that. I didn't know this was a talent that I really had. I was fascinated with stories when I was a kid, read Hardy Boys, read these other things. And again, as I got to tell people about things I was excited about, I learned to tell stories. And through my career, I learned that telling stories to explain technical things to people that didn't really care about technology, they just needed a problem solved, that I connected with them to do more. So it wasn't until we were in an interview loop for somebody in a similar role to mine, interviewed like 8 or 9 people. This was back when I was at Microsoft, and they're all brilliant. I was like trying to take notes from the stuff that they were talking about, all much smarter than I am. And then I said, but my manager turns and says, look, they're all very smart, I'm sure, but they can't tell a story and connect with people like you can. So at that point in time, I was sort of like, okay, maybe what I do. And the problem was I did it. I went with myself 24/7, 365. I didn't think it was remarkable. I thought everybody did it. And that's where I was on me. Well, okay, not everybody can do it, but is there a way that I can sort of help them do that? Look at myself before. So curiosity, love, I just love talking to people and connecting with people.
Yeah, well, that's important because this is a time in our lives where we're feeling the most disconnected. We kind of talked about, like, everywhere around, like, we're focused on our phones and on the news and on the media, when really the most powerful connection is with each other. And, I think about, what do you think it is? Was there a time that kind of held you back from this passion of storytelling, or maybe you had a hurdle? Or, goodness, so many people are having hurdles today to even try to engage with this connection.
One of it, I guess, I sort of did myself. I sort of put myself, and it was early in my career. I'll use it from the career perspective. And the fact that I took a role that was internally facing. I didn't get to go out and talk to customers that actually use the product and do these other things on that. And what I found was my joy was I was starting to dread to come to work. There was no excitement. There was nothing there. Even though I could leverage the stories a little bit, I could not see the impact on the end of the thing. So that's why I've sort of been in technical sales my entire life, outside of those sort of explorations outside of that. And I need to be out meeting with the customers and the people that I can actually see the impact happen with them, much like you do when you're out with the truckers and the stuff like that. You're on that tip of the spear where you can see what you're doing is having an impact, sort of lights up. So I found another role where I could go back and do what I was doing. So that's sort of how I overcame it. But it was sort of the discovery to realize, like, why am I not happy to come to work? Right?
Yeah, well, it's an important realization, right? People are like, Gina, you have so much energy. It's because I love what I do. It drives me. I love connecting. I love changing lives, and you do too. You love storytelling. You love connecting with people. You love changing their life. And I think you have to find, each of us has to find what sparks us, to bring that positive energy. If you are coming and you don't feel that, it's time to kind of make a change. I think it's important realization. So storytelling, like, how do we learn this? How do we learn storytelling?
Well, in doing research for my TEDx that I did, and I can't wait to see yours because I know that's coming up here in the future, is that I did a lot of study about the brain science, and you mentioned some of that earlier. And Lisa Cron wrote a book, Wired for Story, and she sort of points out that our brains are actually wired for stories. They're wired to not only learn from them, but also to tell them. But again, like any other muscle, if we don't exercise that telling piece of that, then we lose it. It goes back to sort of the role that I had where I wasn't able to exercise that all the time. But in the brain science where you're doing stories, because if you've ever been in one of these technical things where there's all these numbers coming by or something like that, have you ever found yourself in a meeting or something where there's got all these numbers and spreadsheets and they don't mean anything, but you do remember the story that this person told about their grandkid? And it's totally sort of unrelated to what was going on, but that's what you took away from the meeting. And that's because that sort of lit up other areas in your brain that now can remember. Like I can remember, I don't remember exactly how old it was, but I remember standing in the middle of the kitchen of an apartment we had back in Beaumont. I don't remember the dialogue and stuff, but I recall that movie, if you will. And that's why you can recall movie scenes and stuff like that. Or a song comes on the radio that you can remember what you were doing back in high school and stuff when that song comes on, because the brain likes it. It helps unlock where it's at. We don't forget anything. They say you never forget anything. You just lose the keys to the door that it's behind.
Right. I mean, that's a neural synapse. The strength, the emotional resonance, the strength of that synapse depends on how much emotional resonance happens positively or negatively. Yeah. So we all have that. We all have memories that we never forget. And so I think it's important because you can harness the goodness and harness that positive energy by telling those stories. So what keeps you happy, Doug? What keeps you happy?
So I'll use an example that happened 2 days ago. So I was at a conference and we were meeting, and I had this 30-minute session on AI and these different things. And it was a workshop, and I had like 5, but it wasn't about me talking. I was asking a question and getting the audience engaged and getting these a bunch of CISOs and stuff, which, it's a crapshoot whether you're going to get the ones that want to talk because they're really smart and they do everything, or, they're not going to do it because it's secure. I can't tell you any secrets because you'll break in.
Right.
And we had just such a great conversation that went on. They opened up and came on. And one of the guys that came up afterwards, he came up to me and said, look, I want to talk to you more about these other things, because you brought up some things I hadn't thought about. That's the thing. Again, that's that light bulb going off where the story that you told connected with them on a level. One of the people I was presenting with, I always ask this when I'm working with a team member or something. We this was the first time we'd worked together, although we were at the company about the same amount of time. And he said, well, your reputation, I thought you were an old guy because, the reputation precedes you. Well, I am, I said, well, I am old, but, and so I asked him, did I meet or exceed my reputation? He says, you absolutely did. He says, but what impressed me most was when you went out there within just a few sentences, everybody was leaning in. Everybody was sort of connecting with you. You had that connection so that then information, that's what made it good. So that's really the power of getting in to do that, is when you can make that connection. It's all about this personal, I call it's an unseen energy that goes across. You felt it when you probably did your TED Talk or anytime you're on stage. There's this audience energy that comes that you're sharing. Nobody sees, but you're making that connection. You're like, when the first time we met, that Terry introduced us, is like, I really like her, right? There's something, we share some things that are, some experiences, and she has a different perspective. And when you connect with somebody like that, you're more open to learning more things, something about them, something from them at that point in time. And that's why when I'm having a sales meeting or something, I want to know who my audience is. This is part of my storytelling technique. Find out who they are. And when you're doing a story, you make them the hero. Not your product, not anything else. You're not the hero. Nobody, I'll forget. But if I can envision myself being the hero, doing something with the information you're giving me, I'll file that away. I'll remember that. And I'll also remember that Gina impressed me a lot. And so if Gina asked me to do anything, I would be, let's go ahead and do that. So when I had the opportunity to be on your podcast, man, I got to sign up. This was like months ago we did this.
Yes. No, I mean, that is exactly right. It's about lifting each other up, and your stories that you talk about connect each other, right? And it is definitely, I love that. I started this season off. My theme this season is all about winning. I was a college athlete, and I think about what it meant to me as a college athlete to win. But over time, you start to get different perspectives of really what truly winning means. So what would you say if someone asked you, Doug, what does winning mean to you? What would you say?
Winning is being 1% better than I was yesterday. It's, regardless of, you can collect trophies, you can collect, I've got bonuses, I've got trips, these other things. But at the end of the day, if I've improved myself and the connection like I did the other day, that was winning. We had a connection. We further on the conversation, but that's because what I took out of there, I improved myself by listening to what they had. So the next time I go tell the story, do something, I'll be better at it the next time. So it's a bit of a personal thing. I was not an athlete, although I've done a couple Ironman. I finished them. But
that's impressive.
I didn't beat a whole lot of people, but I did finish.
You finished, though. That's incredible.
That was always a battle with myself. So that's the thing. You have to determine what winning is to you. There are people I've worked with, which they're the hunters and killers, and the winning is that, and they lose interest after that. Then you have more people that are farmers. It's about a relationship going on to do that. I find myself more in the farmer category because that's really what sustains life. Is getting in and having something there that grows and continues to produce, fruit or vegetables, whatever you're, I like fruit, but, what produces something useful.
Yeah. Well, shout out to all the farmers and all the truckers out there, because the truck drivers are bringing us all that, right? And it's coming up on I appreciate drivers all the time, because everything I have, and I think every time I get on a demo, Doug, with anybody and I'm on it, I thank them. It doesn't matter if they use Luma. I'm just so appreciative for everything that we have, and it's because of them that we have it. And so I started this podcast.
My son-in-law has a short haul business that he does. So I can appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, thank him. Yeah, absolutely. I love that. So I started this podcast a few years ago, 3 years ago now. I'm going to go on to my third season. And I started it because people were saying they were struggling, and specifically truck drivers. And you can imagine it's not just truck drivers. I mean, there's a lot of people, we talked about it even before we went live, like everywhere you look, there's something to think about that you could be struggling. And so what would you say if someone today is listening to our podcast and they're struggling? Maybe they've lost their passion for learning. What would you recommend to them to help them, give them a strategy or something to help move forward?
Yeah, this gets back to sort of some reflection again. Think back at a time, try to get them visuals back at a time when they were happy, when they really enjoyed seeing what's going on. And you try to deconstruct what was happening about that time as opposed to what's going on now. I start, and I always encourage them to ask them, what are they grateful for? Can you dig down and find out some gratitude about something? Because I start off every day with some meditation and a little gratitude, right? I want to say I'm grateful. I don't necessarily write down 3 things, but I always try to come from it. And I found out since I started doing that, my days are a whole lot better. And I find it easier to come up with stories and do that, because there's always something to be grateful for. Whether, some days I have an assumed room temperature and I got up, sometimes it's that easy.
Yeah.
Or that basic, because I'm tired, especially like after a long flight or something. But then again, I had the opportunity to go somewhere else and see something else and meet somebody else. So there's things to be grateful for if you look for it, and if you start from there, if you start from gratitude, and Tara is a great example of sort of sharing
Mhm.
this. It gives you just such a fresh perspective of what's possible, rather than starting from that sort of place. I lost my love for learning and these other things, and
Mm.
it's okay. What is let's sort of find that. I'm not a psychologist, but somewhere back there, you loved learning at one point in time. I would hope. I mean, I'm sure there's people that's not, but that's what I would just start with. Go back to telling that story again. So there's something in that story in your head where you pull that up. What are
Mm.
you feeling? What were you listening to? And these other things on that one, and try to put yourself back in that environment, not longingly at what that was. Don't look backwards and long for the past. Although I do see some pictures where I had hair, and sometimes I think, but then I think how easy life is now. But think about what was going on then that made it special, that made you remember that. Can I reproduce some of that today? That's sort of the things you bring it forward. And again, these just little tricks that has helped me. Again,
Mm.
I'm no, I don't have a doctorate in psychology or anything on that, but I just know those are the things that have worked for me.
Oh, well, practical tips of how to live your life is the real thing. You can
Mhm.
study it, but you live it. You live it. You're an example of goodness, Doug. I love it. I'm so honored to know you and to like learn from you, because there's so much you can learn from anybody, and you
Mhm.
just have to be open to it. And I can appreciate that. Tara introduced me to my guest last week, who is
Huh?
Jill Kirch. She's a
Yes.
color expert. I wonder,
Yes.
so she bases it on hair color, Doug. So I want to know what Jill would say, because, maybe your facial color. I don't know. So Jill, if
I
you're
was,
listening, give Doug
it,
some tips.
it's
Mhm.
funny. We actually were on a call together that Tara
Oh,
arranged.
you
We were on
were?
there.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's
And was
great.
all she could focus on was like skin tone and eye color. So that's what we went with.
Okay, that is so funny. Well, she told me she wanted to ask you this.
Okay.
She wanted to know what the secret sauce was for engaging an audience. So
Mhm.
she knew you did a TEDx. She knows you're a storyteller. She said,
Mhm.
Gina, ask Doug what the secret sauce is for engagement. Mhm.
The secret
So,
sauce is you. This is
mm,
like the last step of the thing that I talk about here. Pick up your story and do these other things, because if it's you, it's your style. And I'll use a brief story to illustrate where this went wrong for me one time. Before I went to Microsoft, they had this training class. They were going to do what they called a roadshow for the System Builder channel. This was back when mom and pop PC stores were everywhere. So there were
okay.
thousands of these across the U.S. And the roadshow is simply you go there and you're talking about the new product. So you're on stage, you're representing Microsoft or whatever at this time doing this.
Mhm.
And they brought 10 of us in. They were looking for people to go do a 20 city roadshow. And I went in there, and like I was looking around, and there was a guy there I called the professor. He had like a tweed jacket and a tie and elbow patches, was very measured with his. And I really like that style. I can appreciate that style. And for whatever reason, I started trying to emulate that all week. And I was failing miserably,
Oh,
right? Because that was not me. That was his secret sauce. That was not
right.
mine. And so it gets to like the
Okay.
Thursday night. We're supposed to have a big review, on Friday.
Mhm.
I call my wife, who was always I call her like Rafiki, and hits me with that stick every now and then. Says, forget
Yeah.
about it. Because she
Right.
said, yeah, she's, what's going on? So, I said, that's not you. You could not be that person in 1,000 years. I said, well, okay, you're right. So I
Right.
went back the next day, really didn't have any practice, but I said, okay, we're going to go do this my way.
Mm.
Went on. I got a call from the guy that ran it that said, I waited for that guy to show up all week, because he could tell from like very first, before I
Oh,
started doing that, he got a glimpse.
yeah.
And I learned this that's because I have to be. So when I do anything, there's energy going on. There's these other things, because that's my style. So, but I've
Yeah.
watched other people. Again, the professor was very good in his style, but that was not me. So be you. That's the thing when because people, again, that honesty that you bring across, the not credibility, but you sort of get that connection. That is truly who that person is. The genuineness in
Yes.
that, right?
Uh,
I'm going to trust you more, because that is who
Right.
you are. So that's regardless of your, I can't steal anybody's stories, but I've told stories that I've heard from other people, but I put my spin on, and I let know, hey, look, I heard this story from this person, and it's always told with my flair. I couldn't
Right.
tell it like them. And it's not that it's good or bad. That's just the way I'm wired. God gave me these talents. I try to put them to the best use that I can.
Aw, well, I'm glad you do that because your talents are incredible. I love it. So, all right, if anyone wants, okay, so I don't know if I should mention your upcoming project or not.
No, you can go ahead. We can talk about it. I'm writing a book.
Okay, so Doug is writing a book, and oh, look at Alyssa. Yes, storytelling is powerful. It is powerful. I love that. So Doug is writing a book. Doug, tell us all about what's upcoming, what you have going on, where people can stories and learn more about you, and then you can leave us. We'll close with you leaving us with some powerful messages today.
Sure. So
that's a lot.
I'm most active.
Tell us about your book. Tell us about your book.
So I'm writing a book. It's about those storytelling techniques and stuff that I use. It's written in my style, so there'll be a lot of laughing that goes on, a lot of smiling that goes on with it too. I want it to be an easy read. And it's really aimed sort of at those system engineers and stuff that myself 10 or 15 years ago, that they're really smart, but how do you share that and be most impactful that you can? But it's for anybody that really wants to tell a better story. There's a framework I put in there. There's 8 steps and there's 4 pillars that we talk about, and I give examples, and you'll be able to sort of work through some of these things as well. Again, it should be a fairly light read, but hopefully it does help you sort of connect yourself with stories. So I've got that. I'm most active on LinkedIn, the Doug Thompson. I'm about the Doug Thompson everywhere. Still trying to figure out TikTok, but I've got that there. Occasionally a video comes out. I do my own podcast. There's the Doug Thompson podcast, of which you were a guest on.
Yeah, but I do have to tell you something. I hired a new employee, and she said, "Gina, you're on TikTok." I'm like, "No, I'm not. I've never used TikTok." And she sent me it last week, and guess it was your TikTok.
Oh,
yes. It was me on your TikTok. So
on the podcast.
Yes.
So I've got you on there, so you can't say you don't have her presence anymore.
I guess.
So
You have
that's
a
funny. That's a great
That's
story. That's a great story.
It is a great story. I'm like, why am I on? I'm not on TikTok. And she's like, yes, you are. So
all right,
thank you for introducing me to TikTok. Doug, leave us with some lasting advice today, some goodness to lead us into the rest of the week.
Start out with some gratitude if you can, because we have a choice when we get up in the morning. Is it going to be a good day or a bad day? I mean, or at least how we approach it. You can't impact the things that happen to you. You can control the things, how you respond to it. And I find that if I'm starting with a little gas in my tank from having some gratitude, it makes dealing with the setbacks and stuff a little easier. We all have to go through those struggles, but I always look at it like a triathlon. The training and stuff that you do makes you stronger so you can finish the race. So go do that. That's my tip for the day. And tell stories. Just connect with people and listen to stories. Listen to other people tell stories. And you don't have to be around a campfire. That adds a whole other flavor to it. But you'll find stories all around you if you think about it and you look at it.
I love that. Thank you, Doug, so much for being on today. Everyone connect with Doug. Until next time, we'll see you on my podcast. We'll see you next week. Bye, everyone.
Thanks. Bye.